Hello to everyone in the internet, and you are watching Culture Shock, the only show on the internet that knows how to separate an issue of culture from an issue of politics. It is currently Wednesday, November 28th, and this is the news. Alrighty. So, NASA just recently has successfully landed on Mars. This is not the first time, but this is probably the first time in a while. Oh, it's funny, we got the first photos back from the new lander, and I was kind of expecting the red planet to be a little more, well, red. Actually, it looked a little brown, looked very brown. Now, you may not have heard about this, but NASA recently wanted to investigate SpaceX, investigate their workspace, because they saw that interview where Elon Musk was smoking pot. A lot of investigations these days, a lot of red tape. The Democrats set the precedent. What have they done? But it's also possible they wanted to investigate SpaceX so they could get to Mars first, if I understand the relationship between them correctly. But I wanted to talk more seriously about progress in space for humankind, and what this will ultimately mean if we continue to land there, making the trip more and more efficient and much quicker every time we get there. We do it better, we do it faster. It could be eventually that we could set up a little colony on Mars. Now, I do not believe in the pipe dream of terraforming Mars. I don't think that's ever going to happen. However, if we were to set up some form of a geodesic structure or even an underground, like a really huge underground facility, then you're talking. That might work. And if you could create an air filtration system and make breathable air, that would work really great too. But to terraform the entire planet itself is just very unlikely. They should be looking instead into geodesic structures and hydroponic farming, as that seems the most viable. Also, you'd probably want to set up your geodesic city in a location that is pretty good distance from, say, Olympus Mons, because that is the largest volcano in the solar system, and it covers a wide area. So it would kind of suck if your geodesic city got hit with, say, a flow of lava and was therefore destroyed, and everyone inside dies horribly. Man, we need to turn this shit positive. Talk about something else. Quick! So, let's see. The immigrant population is at a record low recently. This was achieved due to a combination of the increase of importance in migrant enforcement, as well as economic forces. Because things down south in Mexico have been greatly improving. A lot of due to the years and years of our providing foreign aid, and Mexico finding more sustainability in themselves. Like, I don't want to say that movies really help an economy, but hey, when Gojira came out and it helped Japan establish an entire, their version of Hollywood, an entire industry, that gets them revenue. Having an industry in your country creates revenue. Similarly, Mexico is now well known for their gritty action movies like Machete and shit like that. So obviously that's going to bring them revenue. So that's economic forces, is making movies. That's a major export. I've never seen Machete myself. I'm not one for gritty action films. I'm more of an intellectual. I like sci-fis and fantasy films mostly. I don't care much for for gritty action. Although I do like The Fugitive. I like that movie a lot. Albeit, while it is getting better with migrant population, there's still a long way to go. I mean, we need to do more investigation into the cause of overstayed visas. We cannot just automatically assume malintent. There could be other reasons. Like a lack of funds to make it back home, missed a flight, waited too long. You know, all the regular excuses that even born American citizens also go through. This shit happens. So a benign investigation into overstayed visas would be a good idea. And again, America creates migrants and asylum seekers in the first place by creating unwarranted proxy wars in South America. We essentially created this situation. So you could say that this whole situation at the border is more or less our just desserts. It's kind of what we've earned. You reap what you sow. Of course, with the South American and Mexican migrant population diminishing of illegal immigrants, it's looking like the next group will be Asians. I personally live in a state where there's actually a lot of South Koreans living here. Not that there's a problem with that, I certainly do not have an issue with that. But who knows how many of them could in fact be illegal immigrants that overstayed a visa or two. It's something they never talk about, so how are we supposed to know? That's part of the reason why I wanted to say investigations are probably a good way to go. The impact that this will have on America culturally is that with fewer illegal immigrants, there will be less crime. That is, there will be less crime caused by migrants. We'll still have all the inner city bullshit, of course. We'll still have the big city crime, but we'll have less crime in smaller cities where things are relatively more peaceful and more stable. Big cities like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, they'll still have a pretty solid crime rate, of course. But we'll have less crime in smaller cities due to fewer immigrants. That'll be the first real noticeable impact. Another noticeable impact should be that job opportunities will start to open up. There'll be less spending on welfare, and things will become a little more stable in the long run. Which, of course, is nothing but a plus for us. Anyway. Now we're going to get a little crazy. Rodrigo Duterte is the president of the Philippines, and there are some communist rebels in the Philippines, and I understand him wanting to take care of that situation, but I think he's gone a little too far in his aim to create what apparently he terms as a anti-communist death squad. Ugh. Sounds like bad dialogue from a cheesy action flick from the 80s. This is kind of like Red Dawn, but in reverse. It's a similar situation. And honestly, the whole thing makes President Duterte come off sounding a little crazy. You know, a little nuts. You know, red's under the bed sort of thing. You know, paranoia comes in many, many forms. And this could potentially lead to a Council on Un-American Activities like human rights abuse circle. It's like, what if this death squad chooses not to properly discriminate between someone who's a little upset with the government and an actual communist, and start treating them both the same? Then what? I'll tell you what. Then the government turns tyrannical and they start getting hit with sanctions. But this is in fact a response to an actual communist rebellion within his country, a small communist party rebelling against the general ebb and flow of how their government normally operates. This is basically Red Dawn backwards. And therefore there could be the possibility of a revolution. If he pushes too hard on his anti-communist policies, then the communist rebels may decide to push back and turn into a huge civil war. There's a reason why some politicians choose to be more subtle. It's because they know that if they get too crazy and too forceful, people are basically going to want to push back. And apparently Rodrigo Duterte is not that kind of politician. In other news, the U.S. economy has expanded at an annual rate of 3.5% in the July to September quarter. This was driven by consumer spending and better than expected investment. This follows a 4.2% expansion, which was driven by a 1.5 trillion tax cut. Yes, spenders in Washington, as it turns out, tax cuts do help. In fact, I would like to see more tax cuts. Not too many all at once. You don't go into the problem with a sledgehammer. You go into the problem with a screwdriver. As to the better expended investment in the previous quarter, well, I know this is a bit of an anecdote, and this is not necessarily proof of anything, but there are a lot of investment apps in like the Google Play Store and other mobile markets. And I think that's a pretty clear sign that people, even my age, like 28 and 29 years old, are into the idea of investing and making business decisions. It's like you want to write all millennials off as people who don't know how to spend money and just waste their money on pointless things. Such blanket statements are frequently untrue. There's demographics and gulfs and differences, always. There will be some millennials that are kind of savvy. Me personally, not so much. But there are those I personally know that are very good with spending their money. I sometimes hang out with them just on the hope that their talent for spending and not spending money will somehow rub off on me through osmosis. I can only hope. That would be amazing. Anyway, the economy is pretty great right now. So, we got a lot to be thankful for. And as much as the anti-Trumpers will hate to say it, but it's the truth. A lot of it we can thank Trump for. He opened the door for us to make our own social improvements on the economy. He opened up the door. And then we are walking on through. That's about it all, folks. Tschüss.